Located in downtown Phoenix, the Colden Law Group specializes in business and election law, civil and political litigation, as well as evictions and special actions. Call them today at 602-730-2985. That's 602-730-2985.
Hi, this is Liz Harris, and I wanted to give a shout out to Hub Radio Phoenix. They have been amazing, especially when I ran for political office. They helped broadcast me, let the world know, and now that I'm involved in election integrity and helping prove that there was massive fraud here in Arizona, they have invited me on their show many times, and I am forever grateful. So please do watch Hub Radio Phoenix for the truth. Thank you.
Hey folks, Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb here. With the increase in private businesses and even government organizations talking about mandating the vaccine, I wanted to let you know that here at the Pinal County Sheriff's Office, we do not mandate the vaccine. And as long as I'm your sheriff, we will never mandate the vaccine. We believe that your health choices are yours and yours alone. So whether you get the vaccine or don't get the vaccine, that's your private information. Here, we believe in America and freedom, and we're going to continue on with that. God bless.
Hub Radio Phoenix is an internet-based podcast platform providing numerous special interest programs reaching over 100,000 viewers per week. Hi, I'm Ron Ludders, executive producer of Hub Radio Phoenix. We don't pretend to be journalists, but we're not afraid to say what's on our minds. We thank you for watching, liking, sharing, and subscribing to Hub Radio Phoenix. Stay tuned, stay faithful, as the best is yet to come.
Welcome to Backstreet Gossip, current events, news talk, and political commentary. Now here's your host, Ron Look.
I am your host, Ron Ludders, and hello. It's a beautiful Monday here. It's actually cooling off a little bit, Ray.
It is. They said that the high was only going to be 99 today.
And I'm here with my buddy here, Mr. Ray Michaels.
Hello, everyone.
And we appreciate you joining tonight. We're going to have a very, very special show. But before we do, I want to thank you all for tuning in. And I want you to go to our website here. It's backstreetgossip.com. I want you to look at it, enjoy it. We've got lots of good information on there, and it's information that you all need. Additionally, I'd like you to also check on our YouTube page. You can always find some of our past programs on there. And so I encourage you, if you've missed one show, go back there, and it's Hub Radio Phoenix on YouTube. And give us a like while you're there, and share some of our programs.
You know, Ron, I don't know if people know this or not, but before Arizona's audit or America's audit happened, we actually had Ken Bennett on here, who is the liaison. That's in some of our back shows. So it's always good to review some of the shows and see that we were really the forerunner in a lot of the things that are happening here in Arizona.
Oh, and we had Farnsworth, Eddie Farnsworth on.
Yes, that started even back, in November,
that started in November and December of last year. Now, one of the really nice things about it, for those of you that don't know, this audit is coming out this Friday. And,
that is exciting.
And guess who's going to cover it?
I think Hub Radio.
Hub Radio will cover
We're
it.
going to be there.
I've called over there, and they're going to save us a little spot, probably a little spot is what I meant, because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of press there, Ray.
So we have to get up close and personal with some of the other outlets then, huh?
Oh, yeah, we might be pretty close.
Yeah, you know, when we had Senator Farnsworth on, he was with the previous session, and he was instrumental in getting the ball rolling on this whole thing. So, but it's, you know, we've been here since the beginning, Ron. We've been talking about this.
We have, Ray, and guess who is going to speak before the state senate this Friday?
Is that our friend Liz Harris?
No, Dr. Shiva.
Wow, Dr. Shiva.
I mean, this guy is dynamite. Anybody that's ever seen him speak, he's He's from India. He's an Indian. He's not an American Indian. He's an Indian American. And this guy is brilliant. And
Now, there's no relation from Dr. Shiva to Dr. Shivago, right?
No.
Okay, just checking.
No. And we have on the line today one of our friends here from Congressional District 6, Mr. David Schweikert. Welcome to the show, David.
Yeah, Dr. Shivago, an uplifting film. It starts with the funeral and goes downhill from there.
And it's long, too. There's got to be an intermission.
Oh, so you know you're in trouble when you guys start with, hey, it's going to be only 99 degrees. It's a touch of fall in the air.
Well, you know,
It's
for the
true.
people who are watching in England, many people fainted when I said that. So, you know,
Well-
they have a heat wave at 79 and people die. So,
Well, yeah, but like I'm back here in D.C. right now, and I just walked in the door just in time to hop on this call with us from the Freedom Caucus meeting, and it's so sticky outside.
Oh,
You know, I'll take our dry heat any day over this stuff back here in Washington.
Oh, I remember one time going over there, and I was trying to find a building, and I was kind of lost, and I just kind of wandered around, and somebody said, well, take a cab. I said, yeah, but it could be right across the street where I'm looking, and I just, David, I don't know how you figure that city out when it's got this address northwest, this address northeast, this address southeast.
The dirty little secret is you become a member of Congress, you actually, your whole life ends up being right around the Capitol. I mean, because your meetings are in the House office buildings, your office is there, you vote over in the Capitol. I've only seen one or two of the museums.
Oh, really?
In my time here. You don't, I mean, we eat a third of our meals in the vending machines down in the basement here in the Cannon building. Because what's happening, you every waking moment, the scheduler is going to fill up because they're sadists. I thought that would be funnier. But the fact of the matter is,
I'm the only one who
it's
laughed.
not like it is on television where you see these people going out to the dinners and doing this.
right.
If there's a dinner, it's a fundraiser, and that's all there is.
Well, Congressman, I know for sure that if there's coffee in the vending machines, you're right next
You're
to
there.
it.
Oh, and don't tell anyone I'm sucking down a coffee right now, and I know I shouldn't, because then I
know,
can't figure out why I don't sleep.
I'm actually glad we're on the radio because I know every time you're in a studio, you bring a carton of coffee.
Well, I figured it's like an alcoholic. You want everyone to drink with you, so that's why I bring coffee for everyone.
And I don't drink coffee. That's why I'm glad that you're not here.
I got to tell you, that worries me about you.
Well, David, I guess there's so much going on, and I'd like to start by going over. And I know you probably left Phoenix this morning, and so you saw, I think, on the news the huge rally and insurrection that took place this weekend.
Oh, yeah. But it's a look, we're learning some very interesting things, and we need to break our minds into two pieces right now. The January 6th Commission put together by Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats is a political operation. I'm sure there'll be some fascinating information will come out, but it's designed to move forward leftist power. They desperately want to use it as a wedge, as a tool to take on former President Trump, but also to go at Republicans. There's another thing happening where there's all sorts of information now starting to come out from those who are incarcerated and their litigation, their prosecution, those things, on how many of these folks. There were recordings, apparently, because this got dropped, I think, earlier today. Recordings of some of these folks weeks ahead of time. So if there's that sort of information, where FBI and other sting operators had been recording this, if that's true, the whole narrative of this just was a sneak attack that blew out of nowhere just can't be true. You can't have both things. You can't have a bunch of informants who are recording the folks, or this just came out of nowhere. You can't have both.
Well, we've had a number of Arizonans that were were sitting in the can down there, and of course one of them
I
was
think the most famous one is Jake.
Jake.
He's the one who
shaman.
Yeah, the shaman.
And I don't know if you followed that, David, but this guy, he's the one that dressed with the buffalo horns and that. And
Yes, I really would think we need to help him on his fashion sense.
that was probably not wise,
You know,
especially in the middle of winter.
he wears that outfit whether it's freezing cold outside or whether it's boiling hot. It's
Yeah,
always
I
the
think
same
my previous
thing.
statements then still holds up. Look, this becomes one of our problems, and this is more of a universal comment. We're trying to help our brothers and sisters in the country understand we care, we want to defend the Constitution, we want prosperity for everyone. And sometimes the way we communicate that, we have to do it in a tone and a voice, and sometimes we dress that tells the story that doesn't scare the very people who we have to convince. We have to deal with reality. Conservatives, we have a problem with suburban women. We have to find a way to let them understand that our policies are what sets them free, and the leftist policies are what subjugates them.
Exactly.
And I know it's frustrating because sometimes we want to, go out and wave flags and do some of these things that are that get the energy out. And maybe the kindest thing we can do is show up at their door, knock, and listen to them. And that's it's my concern. Can I give you a 10-second story? See if this makes sense.
We're starting the clock now.
On Friday, on Friday, I drove down to the tabulation center down in Maricopa County. That's where the recorder does their ballots. And I was picking up some maps, but I was also picking up a bunch of voter registration forms. We're doing just an in-house voter registration project. And they hand you this big clipboard, and you got to sign, for all the voter registration slips you're getting. And I looked at the top page, and then I looked at the next page down, and then the next page down. They were all Democrat groups that had been coming in there and getting voter registration forms. The District 20 Democrats, the District 23 Democrats, the Maricopa County Democrats. I think I saw only one Republican group there.
Mm-hmm.
That's blocking and tackling. That's how ultimately you win elections.
Well,
and that really left me with a sinking feeling that there had been thousands of voter registration forms picked up by Democrat groups, and I was the only second Republican person who'd been there getting something in the last month.
So Congressman, do you feel that when these people are going out and registering people under the Democratic Party, do you think that they disclose exactly what the party platform is? Because when they go in,
no.
Yeah, so it's almost as though they're going out under false pretenses, saying, "Hey, you know what? We help people. Just believe us," rather than being upfront and truthful with them and say, "Look, this is what the party stands for. Do you believe in these things?" If the answer is no, they shouldn't sign it. I mean,
well, but we have to be very careful. Remember, a lot of the voters we really, really need are people who are just working their hearts out. They're trying to survive. They're trying to make enough money to pay for that rent or that mortgage or to take care. I mean, you've had kids. I mean, it's raising children. It's just exhausting and time-consuming. I think sometimes those who are conservative activists, I walk around with a Constitution in my pocket. But for many people, the first thing they want to know is, does this party care about me? Do you care about me? And will my life for my family, myself, be better? Sometimes it's not all of our issues and our policies. They don't want to hear that because they don't have time for it. And there becomes, I think, one of our difficulties. We got to show up. We got to explain we're the ones that give $1. We're here. We're going to go for shared prosperity. You're going to be part of that prosperity. And then if they care, we'll tell them more.
Well, David, I agree with you. I can't help but agree with you. But I want to say this. A lot of us are disappointed in the Republican Party in D.C. And I'll give you a good example. We started talking about the shaman and the people that were there, and they were innocent people, and they're still being locked up. And the real question is, where is the Republican leadership? Where is the the RNC? Where are some of our best senators, our most vocal senators? What are they doing? I mean, let's face it, we know the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, probably the Seventh and Eighth Amendments, or Sixth and Eighth Amendments have all been violated. And what is the Republican Party leadership doing about that?
Oh, it's a great question what the leadership is doing. I mean, I know we have some folks who are lawyers in Freedom Caucus who have been trying to help, put together resources so people are being treated at least humanely and fairly. But there's others out there that have much bigger guns than we have in Freedom Caucus to raise money, to put together legal counsel to make sure at least, the Constitution and the laws are being followed fairly. But it's much more than just that. I need you to think through, let's go through an example that happened this week. We were marking up in the Ways and Means Committee this massive tax and spending bill, largest in U.S. history, 40 tax hikes, woven into the bill, and that partially the Democrats were playing games. It was 4 days of working up and doing amendments, and they would only give us our next day's portion of the bill. We all of a sudden are finding out, with all this other craziness, there's things in there that are forced unionization of all government employees.
Yes.
If you want your tax credit for your electric vehicle, the full tax credit, the vehicle needs to be made in a unionized factory. They had woven in hundreds of these little landmines, or spiffs, as you might think of if you're more mercenary, for the folks that give them money, the folks that give money to the left, the folks that finance their races. I don't know why we're having trouble getting the leadership to stand up on their soapbox and scream about this. So, okay, it's getting some press that there's all these tax hikes coming and this $3.5 trillion spending. But the public has no idea how much really bad is woven into these legislation. And if that bill passes, it's not Afghanistan, it's not a treacherous general, it's not, even though it's what's happening at the border is off the charts dangerous. That piece of legislation will be the single biggest change to our society. And if it passes, it will take potentially a decade to unwind it, because they turned all this spending into entitlements, meaning the ability, you can't just walk in and turn it off. You have to have the Senate, the House, the President all move with you to change it. So what the Democrats are doing right now is brilliant, and it's evil, and will change this country for decades.
Well, that part I just cannot understand. But I want to get back to
Ron, just real quick on that same note, I know that the Senate parliamentarian came out with a verdict today, which I thought was very important, because they were trying to include in this massive spending bill amnesty, and they said that it's not. Can you tell us just a snippet about that, please?
Well, can we? I wanted to get David. Excuse me. I really wanted to get back to this subject, and we'll get with Ray's question here, and I want to. This is both a statement and a question, probably more of a statement. When we have American citizens that have done nothing more than going into the Capitol when the doors were open and they're charged with trespassing, malicious trespassing, and you had indicated, I was asking about the leadership, what are they doing about it? What's the Republican Party doing about it? And you mentioned, well, there's not enough money. And I dislike the concept that people's rights can only be given to them through money.
That's partially not what I was saying. It's I know others out there have tried to put together legal funds and those things. So you and I don't know actually all of what's going on. You have some folks who our fears are going to be pushed into, hey, just take a settlement. Some folks that don't have resources to have representation, so they have public defenders. There is a chance that if we do it right, the legal process will expose what has actually happened.
Well, that's assuming you have faith in the legal process. I've kind of lost my faith in it.
I still have some faith. Doesn't mean it's going to treat you fairly in the beginning or the end, but at some point, the truth always comes out. And back to something I think is really important, because this is the sort of thing that's going to rewrite the history of the country. In this infrastructure bill, they call it a human infrastructure bill.
Right.
It's basically take the middle class and turn them into also part of receiving a monthly check from government. Okay, so their broad-based amnesty portion of the bill, the Senate parliamentarian just stripped out. Some of us are fearful. What they'll do is they're going to come back at it a different way. They'll change the money mechanics, because that's functionally what a reconciliation bill is supposed to be. It was originally designed as a way to reduce spending, not increase it. This one is being designed to dramatically increase it, the largest spending bill ever.
Now you're on the House. You're in the House committee on this.
Over. Oh well, no, I'm on Ways and Means.
Okay.
So I'm on the committee that all new tax hikes have to go through.
Shut them down.
Not a single Republican voted for, obviously, any of this legislation. We offered dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of amendments over 4 days. At the end, we did get one Democrat to not vote for the bill. But even some of these folks that hold themselves up as moderates, they're scared to death. Because Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, which becomes such a radical party, will cut their money off and their ability to run races and be reelected.
Well, I understand. I want to go one more time at the people that are still being held in Washington, D.C. We have one of them that's been here and we had interviewed him in the studio here, and of course
one that was arrested and still being followed.
Being followed, and when we call, his phone's tapped when he calls the office here at the studios. And then Ray had done an interview with the shaman, and the guy's somewhat harmless, but they're taking these guys with the most pitiful charges, like parading without a permit or something like that, or breaking and entering the Capitol when there's videos of these people, the Capitol Police opening the doors and letting them in.
I guess.
I want you to see this more in a holistic way. Both the January 6th Commission, what's going on with this. If you're a Democrat and you're going into an election cycle that's typically going to be pretty brutal for the incumbent party, you need something to scare the crap out of, particularly your suburban swing voters, particularly female suburban swing voters. And they're going to try to make this as scary as they possibly can. They're going to try to make the individuals as scary as they possibly can. And it appears well thought out, and they're executing.
Congressman, it seems to me, and we've talked a lot about this on the show as well, is there seems to be a two-tiered justice system, right? So on one hand, we have some people that were invited, and we saw the videos. Oh, come on in. Yes, the shaman was where Nancy Pelosi's, where her desk is, but they stopped for prayer. The Capitol Police prayed with them, and we know that all these things take place. And on the other hand, we have a laptop that has pornography on it by the Pinos, the president in name only, as Ron likes to say, Joe Biden's son Hunter on it with underage girls that he could easily be arrested for and charged with, because we have the evidence right there. So again, we're looking at a two-tiered system. How do we break that cycle?
Oh, yeah, okay, because I was going to... Look, what happened on January 6th shouldn't have happened. Let's just set it down. It got out of control. It should not have happened. I don't believe many of these people had malice in their souls. I don't think they had malice in their hearts. But you got to understand, the media, the number of times we've talked about everything's weaponized. If you run for office and you screw up some of your paperwork, if you're a Democrat, you sort of get a glance and get told to fix it. You're Republican, you will be prosecuted for it. It goes up and down. You got to understand, everything is weaponized, and the bureaucracy that enforces everything. What party do they support? I mean, let's stop for a moment. Don't use the term deep state. It's not a deep state. It's the state right in front of you. You walk into one of these massive buildings here in D.C., and you see rows and rows and rows of offices of bureaucrats. Do you think those are rows and rows of Republicans? Or conservatives or libertarians? That's the core Democrat base. They control the levers of power. They control the levers of prosecution. They control the rulemaking. How do you think the way they see the world, what did you think was going to happen? The ultimate solution is federal government needs to be dramatically smaller. You cannot let it continue to hold this much power over our lives, because the bureaucracy will always collect more and more and more power, and then do whatever's necessary to protect themselves to keep that power.
Well, even when the Republicans are in power, there are plenty to blame going around that don't believe that. I mean, you've seen how many Republicans, and of course they're called rhinos for the most part, Republicans in name only, but you see how many of them melt away and will vote with the opposition. And that's pretty disturbing. When we do have the majority, it's in majority in name only.
Well, they just seem to want to sit back and just enjoy that they have the majority, but not really get anything accomplished. And when the Democratic base is there, they're nibbling away. They keep going further and further. Even if they get just a little bite, they're moving in that direction that they want to go.
Can I give you a tough one? And this is a pox on all of our houses. So we're getting up against the debt ceiling. A number of us will never vote to raise the debt ceiling unless there's major structural changes on spending. It's the way we got sequestration 10 years ago. And whether you like sequestration or not, it was the single most effective thing we've had in a decade to reduce federal spending. That came about because of a debt ceiling fight. But as soon as we get up against one of these fights, my phones will start to ring. And it will be Republicans that you know. David, I think the president said I'm not going to get my Social Security check on time unless you raise the debt ceiling. You need to just give in. Hey, I have a cousin who's in the military, and they're claiming they're not going to pay them their salary. You need to just give in. The reality of it is our folks need to toughen up and understand we're all in this together. And instead of picking up the phone and saying, screw it, fight to the last moment, get changes. Try to get the Democrats to say if they want a debt ceiling, they have to have Republican votes, that they're willing to make structural changes in how we've bankrupted my little girl.
Yes, that poor little thing. She's what,
requires
$80,000 in debt already?
Yes, and you cannot give in to the theatrical threats. If someone tells you there's going to be a default, they're lying. We have plenty of cash flow to cover our bond payments, and that's default when you don't cover your bond payment. So the sneaky people here in D.C. use the term structural default. Structural default says, hey, we're supposed to send out a payment to go buy all these Dixie cups. and we don't send the payment. There's no such thing as a structural default. That's a made-up term. There's default where you don't make your bond payments, your bond interest payments, and we have plenty of cash flow from tax revenues that come in every month to keep those payments and keep our commitments. But what leverage, for those of us in the Republican side right now, we're in the minority. We don't control the House, we don't control the Senate, we don't control the White House. Fighting on this is our leverage. And then we're going to get a bunch of Republicans this coming week and are going to be filling up my phones saying, David, you need to give in because it's making the stock market nervous.
Wow.
Well, David, let's go back a little history. I remember you as a state legislator. How long ago was that?
Lifetime ago.
How long
and
ago
then when
was
I
that?
left there, remember, when I left the legislature, it was 14, 15 years before I went back into politics.
Then
I
you were the
should have stayed
treasurer.
out.
You were the county
Yes.
treasurer, as I recall.
But that was 14 years later. I went back to the real world for about 14 years.
Wow. At any rate, let me ask you this question. You know, having been through the legislature and working for the county, of course, and we know that there's a real clash right now between at least the Senate and the Board of Supervisors. How do you feel about this forensic audit?
I look forward to Friday. This is one of those. I think the only honorable thing to say is I'm going to get a copy of what's printed. I'm going to read it over the weekend, and you're going to use your intellect to try to understand it. Anyone who starts to spout that they know what's in it before it's published, I think that's disingenuous because we want this to be as fact-based as possible because we need to persuade the persuadable. The Democrats aren't. If there's something negative, the Democrats aren't going to believe it. If there's something that doesn't say something, certain Republicans aren't going to believe it. We have to, get the data, read it, understand it, and then from there we figure out what we're going to do with it.
Now, Congressman, we've talked a lot on this show about this, and like from the very beginning, we've been intimately involved in this. What is your gut feeling? I mean, we brought out numbers that just don't make any sense.
Forgive me now. See, now I've not been at the county. I've not been in the state. I'm back here in Washington D.C. So I just read what comes in my phone, or read what's publicized. And the smartest thing you do is don't shoot your mouth off if you don't have facts. And at this moment, this Friday, we get our facts. Let's wait, get our facts, and then we build off of that.
All right, we've had Liz Harris on. She's a big friend of the show here, and she did just on her own with a lot of volunteers. They did canvassing, and they got a lot of information over the last 10 and a half months. Ron, I know that you've brought. We did a little bit of numbers here. We do it for fun because we enjoy doing this. And Ron, being an auditor, he loves numbers. So we said if there's X number of people in the country that are eligible to vote, and we know that President Trump received X number of votes, everybody acknowledged it. Here's the remaining votes that are left, Ron, and you probably have the numbers off the top of your head.
David is a numbers guy as well, and I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but we found that there weren't significant numbers of votes out there for him to receive 80 million votes after you took the numbers and what.
But can I beg? But can I beg of you?
Sure.
Right now, we have part of our community. We need to convince that this has been done as professionally as possible. And you and I are going to have all sorts of fun. We can play the math games and number games and what-if games. Let's wait till Friday. Let's get our copy of what's published and read it and build our story from that. Our hey, here's what happened, or here's where the legislature must fix something. Because I go through, I have one great example. My mother passed away a decade ago. She still got ballots this election. Now, she didn't vote them, thank God,
That would have been a little difficult.
Yeah, that would have been. But my little brother, we gave my brother the house. Well, he had earned it, and it's there in the North Phoenix area. But she's been passed away for a decade, and she was still getting a primary and general ballot. And when I talked about this in front of a Democrat group, they hissed at me and saying, "But come on, just from the standpoint of, do you really want all these ballots floating around to people who are no longer with us?" There's no question. There's all sorts of opportunities for bad acts, and the legislature this year, you got to give them some credit. They did pass some decent ballot cleanup language for that permanent early ballot list. Now with the audit coming out, will you find out there's other Achilles heels that also must be addressed?
Yes, I agree. Well, we're going to find out because we've actually been invited down there, and we intend to go. David,
but let's not second guess them. Let's give them the respect that there's how many millions, how many hundreds, tens of thousands of hours people committed to this. Let's let them present what they have. And in some ways, I think it's sort of disrespectful to saying, well, we might see this, we might see that. No, this isn't a football game. This is our republic. This is our democracy. Let's see what happened.
Any way you look at it, I think that it should be commonplace that once an election happens, it should just be automatically audited to make sure not who won so much as was everything done correctly along the way.
Well, Paul Gosar and I just walked back from our meeting, and we were having this conversation. Could you imagine, because Paul, Andy, and I wrote a letter to the boards of supervisors right after the election saying, hey, there's some real concern. Do a hand count. Because, match up with the number of sign-ins you have, so either the envelopes or people that sign in, and then do a hand count of the ballots. And if they don't match, then you need to go further. It was going to be expensive. It was $600,000. It's a drop in the bucket to what's been now spent. And we could have done that in December and had this over then and known if something had happened. But it's one of the greatest fragilities in politics, I think, is people's egos. People, we do things just right, or this and that. Oh, how dare you question me? And how much of this fighting between the state, the county, everyone else, was vanity? If we had just done that hand count right then, you could even done, a major sample hand count. You would have seen if there was something not lining up in the math. Instead, here we are almost a year later, and we're just now about to find out some of the details.
Yes.
And we're excited for that.
David, I have a number of questions that I'd like to ask you, some of them based on the publication that you have recently sent out, and if you don't mind. The next thing on my mind is the border scenario, and that in itself is just disgusting. And then I'm going to present something that our producer had mentioned to me that kind of proves that the Biden administration are racists, and that is that we're letting all these people.
They're sending Haitians back.
They're sending black people back to where they came from, but they're not sending Afghanis, and they're not sending Latinos.
It has been pointed out. But can I beg of us? Let's do a little highbrow for a moment.
Okay.
So let's say I came to Ron Ludders and said, "Hey, Ron, do you care about the working poor?" And Ron would say, "Of course. Hell, we've all been one."
Been there, done that.
What is in this? One of the reasons I ask you to think this way just a little bit is often you and I are talking to people who are not political like you and I.
Yes.
They don't think about these issues, but they do care about people. What's the most economically brutal thing you can do to someone who's working poor? It's two things, and this administration is doing it. You flood a country with people with similar skill sets. So
Cheap
you're
labor.
that young man. Well, but you're that young man that didn't graduate high school, but you're a worker. You got yourself a truck. You're hanging drywall. You may have a child that you're trying to support, but you're out there. You're learning a trade. You're busting your backside. You are becoming. That you're working. You're trying to work your way into the true American middle class. From an economic standpoint, the number one thing this government can do to kick your teeth in is flood the market with people with similar skill set. And that's what we're doing. And then the second thing is inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Inflation beats the crap out of the working poor because they don't own a big house. They don't have a stock portfolio. They don't have real estate investments that all go up in value with inflation. They're just trying to survive. They're trying to figure out a way to pay a rent, be able to afford a truck, pay for the food that keeps getting more expensive. Opening up the borders and the inflation, there's a very good chance at the end of this year you're going to see the middle class and the working poor middle class, working poor, all being much poorer, being much worse off because what the Democrats have done to them. And the perverse thing, the Democrats are going to run around and say, well, we care about these poor people. No, they don't. Either that or they would straighten out their economics.
And the sad thing about this is that the poor people will turn around and vote Democrat. Doesn't make sense to me.
I got to tell you, I'm more hopeful than many people. Look, I'm 59 with a 5-year-old, so I'm pathologically optimistic. But like in our district, our congressional district basically is from the Fort McDowell Indian community to 43rd Avenue. So it's Carefree, Cave Creek, Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, all in North Phoenix, 43rd Avenue, and Glendale. So, we have some precincts that truly are that working middle class, and a couple that are very Hispanic. Do you know in our polling, Republicans, myself included, we were winning Hispanic men in the election for the very first time.
Well, that's good to hear.
Well, but what's so important about that, it's starting to mean working men and women are starting to realize who cares about their prosperity, who cares about them getting ahead. And that's a huge change from just a few years ago, and that's Donald Trump did that. The hard thing was, like around Desert Ridge Mall,
Yes.
Republicans didn't do well. And a lot of that is from our polling, was suburban females that in many ways when we did the real fancy polling and then asked all the other questions, they didn't feel we were listening. We need to figure out how to listen to those folks that are trying to raise a family and also continue to cultivate the fact that we're seeing a huge movement in the Hispanic community now voting for conservatives. If we could get both those populations, the Democrats are toast.
It seems to me as I look at this, they're trying to create an environment by bringing these illegals in. They're creating an environment where they're looking for the people to look to the government for their dependency. So the government can say, look, we understand it's very difficult for you. We're going to give you money now because of the situation that on the backside they created. They're creating a dependency for the people that depend on the government so the government can have more control over them.
You're not going big enough. You're not going big enough. The first reaction is, well, that's why there's going to be a million plus who have come in, and God knows it's probably dramatically higher that when you take those who were not caught at the border. It's dramatically bigger than that. Remember the piece of legislation we were talking about earlier, the $3.5 trillion?
Right.
Yes.
Much of that is actually trying to take the middle class and put them also on monthly stipends. Hey, we're going to send you a check every month because you have children. We're going to send you a check every month because of this. That is sort of the global approach of the Democrats. And you had two ways to do this. You could design a tax system, spending system that maximizes economic growth and prosperity, or you can do transfer payments. And if you're right there in the true middle class, hardworking middle class, at the end of the decade, you're probably about the same from the transfer payments as the economic growth. The difference is the economic growth means you have a future. You have a future to be able to save for retirement. Your wealth is going to go up. The value of your labor goes up. In the transfer payment model, the value of your labor actually goes down. The economic growth of the country goes down. So it's a very cynical way to sort of say Democrats they so believe in government. They believe a wealth transfer model, whereas conservatives, we believe in growth and prosperity because we believe growth is moral. And so you got to see it beyond even just what's happening, the chaos at the border, which is horrible. But this is what the Democrats tend to do to all of us. They're also doing, and I'm going to throw one other at you, to show you how duplicitous they are. In that legislation from this last week, they gave all these fancy speeches of how they're going to tax the rich. But what they don't tell you is they're also subsidizing the rich. We did a quick calculation. You have someone that makes $800,000 a year. They're rich. They intend to give them up to $118,000 in subsidies if they buy the right electric vehicle, if they buy the solar panels, if they buy all these things. And it helps you sort of understand the game the Democrats are playing is you have to lobby me and contribute to my campaign so I don't raise your taxes too much. And then you have to lobby me and give me money for our Democrat campaigns, so we'll keep giving you all these subsidies for you to buy things.
It looks like they're stealing from both sides, right? They're stealing from the rich,
yes, that's
right?
a better way to phrase it.
Right? But they're also stealing away the pride that somebody gets by working hard, making a living, and saying, you know what, this is mine. I earned this, and I'm proud of it. They're stealing that away from you, Ron, as well.
Well, yes, and I actually think that may be one of the secrets of how all of a sudden out of nowhere, and this should be, and I can show you some sort of internal memos that we got from some of the Democrats. Democrats are absolutely panic-stricken to see the polling that Hispanics, particularly Hispanic men, are now voting for Republicans.
That's definitely good news.
Completely blows up. Remember how many times we would hear the stories, well, with the browning of America, the Hispanic Democrats will become the permanent majority. Well, it turns out they're wrong.
Well, I think President Trump had a lot to do with that by encouraging all of that. And Ron, I'm reminded what President Obama said, where, hey, you see that road? You didn't build that. You see that building? You didn't do that. And this was, he almost was laying the foundation to say it's not worth working harder to make a better life for yourself. This has been going on for years
implying
and years.
is the government, is the roads, the government built the roads,
right. So the government,
the sidewalks, the traffic systems, and of course, in one respect they did. But why did they do it? Because there was a need, because of entrepreneurial America. They had to provide those.
Well, but look, there really are, and I don't mean to be taking it down to some fundamental, but it really is just a fundamental. Those who are more conservative, those who believe in people, I think believe that providing opportunity and a system that promotes prosperity is much more moral. And the fact of the matter is, and our tax reform, which I want some credit for because we worked really hard on that.
Thank you for your work there.
But President Trump's willingness to go to the wall to help us get it passed. Look at 2018 and 2019. If you give a darn about the poor and the working poor, because of the prosperity that was happening in the country, because of fixing the regulatory environment, but also the tax reform, our country became dramatically less poor. The working poor became much less poor. The thing that Democrats used to talk about all the time, income inequality, it shrunk. So the wealthy got wealthier, the poor just got much less poor. If you were a woman of color trying to, without someone, a spouse or a partner in the home, and you're raising your kids, do you know your wages went up dramatically?
Yeah.
In those, because with the prosperity, your labor became so much more valuable. That's the model that actually changes the nature of the country in a really good way. It makes our poor much less poor, but it also provides a path that's saying, for those who want to be entrepreneurial, those who want to push themselves, you will be rewarded. For those who are willing to show up to work, you're going to be rewarded. And for those who are on the sidelines, you are wanted, you are needed, you are loved. Come back into the economics of the society. And we were seeing that before this damn COVID thing. And sometimes we get caught up in wanting to argue the specific example, but the fact of the matter is the data is amazing when you see what 2018 and 2019 were like. And I think that's why the Democrats so hated President Trump, so hate Republicans, because we actually delivered to the very people they claim they care about, and they hadn't.
David,
Yeah.
I just want to get back to the leadership issue that we talked about earlier, and that is, we've had some really bad. You have had some. You've had Boehner, you've had Ryan, and we still have McConnell. And I know you've suffered a little bit under that leadership.
Yes. He talks about I'm one of those couple conservatives a couple years ago who were thrown off their committees for being annoying.
And I remember.
But it's also because of that we formed the Freedom Caucus.
Remember,
we formed the Freedom Caucus as a way to defend ourselves because we realized they were picking us off one by one, so we teamed up together.
So was that a reason to be removed because you're annoying?
Apparently so. You don't look. A lot of folks here don't want to be told that, hey, you're a fellow Republican, don't correct what I said. Don't correct my math. Don't challenge, particularly senior members. And look, it's amazing I'm on the Ways and Means Committee. We busted our hump to get on there, but, I'm the only Freedom Caucus member on Ways and Means. And you try to be there. You don't go and be angry and yell and, rattle the trees, but you bring facts and be willing at all times to challenge when they're wrong, when they're doing things that are going to hurt people. And the Democrats go on these tirades and they make crap up. And you got to be willing to go smash mouth in that case, not in a mean way, but saying, the gentlewoman just said this. That's absolutely not true. And the willingness to correct them, and that's not considered polite. So often saying, you get this, hey, look, we don't have the votes, we're going to lose anyway, don't mix it up with them. And I drink far too much caffeine to just sit there like a potted plant.
It brings up a really important point, is that some people have been in there for their entire lives. I mean, look at somebody like Joe Biden has been in there for almost
48 years.
Yeah, almost 50 years. So, and I know that
some of your colleagues as well.
Yeah. So does this justify that maybe we should look closely to term limits?
I think term limits would be wonderful, but you got to do it universally. And I have a fairly radical view on term limits. I think you need to do it with the staff.
Yes.
Not only with members, but staff. And you have to also make there be a wall that you don't get to go become a lobbyist.
David,
there should be an interim.
Can I give you a little inside thing? This is going to be a little dark.
All right, you want to turn the lights down, Neil?
Yeah, no, I believe I've seen members who are heading into their last couple of years before they intend to retire or leave Congress change their voting patterns because they don't want to offend the groups that they're hoping one day to go to work for. I'm going to go become the head of this trade association or go lobby for this organization. And I genuinely believe I've seen a couple people change their voting behavior so they're in good graces.
And that's so unfortunate, because
It is.
they're
it is,
there.
and it's,
They're there
it's
as
so
a
wrong.
they're there as a public servant. They're there as a statesman, and they shouldn't be looking to their own self-interest. Originally this was set up where you would go. You prospered greatly in this wonderful country, and you said, "I will step aside. I will serve because I have done very well. I will go and I will serve for X amount of years, and then I will come back to my house and my family and my job, and I will live my life." There was never an intent for somebody to be a career politician. It was never set up that way.
David, let me.
I want to throw one thing, because he's making a brilliant point, and we do have one real problem for those with the more conservative side, and that is a lot of ours. We get frustrated and we quit. But the only way you ever get the chairmanship of a committee, where you have the power to actually move things and change things, is you got to be willing to suck it up and do like I've done, where you sit in the front row of the committee and you listen to stupid stuff and you try to make a difference. But
the seniority.
This next election, but one of the reasons, and please don't tell anyone this, one of the reasons I so desperately wanted to be on the Ways and Means Committee, it's the only committee in Congress that the chairmanships of all the very, very powerful subcommittees is solely on seniority. It's not who the steering committee likes or the chairman likes. It's by seniority. And this next election cycle, I'm going to be I'm already a top, what they call a top dais, which just means your seniority. There's a real good chance I could get one of the major subcommittees in Ways and Means this next election cycle. And it's not because I'm that loved. I think I'm lovable, but
well, that's what your daughter says.
Yeah, but it will be because of seniority. You would also have to. The other thing you'd have to do is, if you move to a constitutional term limits model for both staff and members, you'd also have to come up with some way to break the seniority model we have right now.
How about who's best suited for the job?
Drop out. Excuse me?
How about who is best suited for the job?
Well, we're not. Government is Congress is not a meritocracy. I can't tell you how many times. I mean, what's the real reason Nancy Pelosi is Speaker for the Democrats?
She's
Come on,
paid people off.
She raises tons. Literally thousands of pounds of cash. She is a fundraising machine. So you think Nancy Pelosi right now is sitting in her office plotting against us? Her staff is doing that. She's probably right now at her third fundraiser this evening, even though she's in her 80s, raising money, putting that cash into the coffers of the Democrats. The leadership, this is not what the Constitution designed or thought of. The Speaker is almost the party's fundraiser.
So it all comes back to the same old cliche, where follow the money. I mean, basically that's what it is.
It's always money. Ron Ludders knows this. I've been saying this for years. It's a family saying: money, power, vanity. But most of the time, it's actually about the money.
Yeah.
Wow.
David, let me go back to something you said about term limits. And you remember one of your colleagues. I think you were there when John Shattuck was there, but at any rate, I used to follow him because he was my congressman at one time, and I asked him, I said, why is it that no matter who is elected, we always seem to get the same, I'll just say BS, make it a nice word. And he told me it was staff. He says, you have to understand, if you don't change the staff, you're going to get the same responses, because the new guys like you, when you're first there, you don't know your way around. You ask the staff and they say, hey, here's a bill, what do we think? And they say, well, that came up 3 years ago, it was a terrible thing, vote against it. When in fact now it might be a good thing. And he said the same basic thing you did. You got to change staff. They're the ones that actually run most of everything.
You have a lot of very smart, charming young people, and I've learned personally. And it's hard because you got 1,000 things you're responsible for, and it costs me dearly. You have to find the time and restructure your life so you're watching your staff always. And we've instituted a series of things in our office the last few years. We try not to hire poli-sci majors. I mean, up till last year, I had a PhD of nuclear physics on staff because he was freaky good at math. And so we could model things and do things where the bureaucracy was never going to tell us the truth. So, we have a young person on staff who's has a master's in types of technology. The problem is Washington, D.C. is full of lawyers and poli-sci majors instead of people who think economically. One of my greatest joys in life is I'm the senior Republican of something called the Joint Economic Committee. So I have a handful of economists that work for the committee and work for me. And we're producing stuff all the time. And it makes the Democrats furious because they keep trying to cut our budget. And it even makes some of the Republicans unhappy because we keep correcting things that they say, saying it's a wonderful idea, but that's not the economic model. It doesn't actually work.
I guess you have to really be careful who you trust as well when you're there.
Yeah, you're going to get burned. Look, you love people. You got to learn to forgive people, but you're going to get burned. It's just the nature of being in a place where vanity it runs a lot of why people are here, and you struggle to find those who are here to save the country.
Yeah. Hey, Ron, can I show this?
Well,
everybody?
just a minute. I want to ask a question about this publication. You can hold it up as we get an answer because we're almost out of time here with David. And you remember, there's 3 hours difference. It's past his bedtime back there.
Yeah.
He's just eating.
Not making fun of the fact I go to bed early.
He's having dinner next to the vending machine.
That's what he says. At any rate, David, in your publication, we'll hold this up, and I appreciate you sending this out. It's very good. But I wanted you to just address this one little comment here or one little story. It's the consequences of putting Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi in charge and what we can do about it. Could you go into a little detail? And if you'd hold that up, Ray.
Well, am I allowed to say the consequence of having Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi in charge? And can I for everyone who's just listening, because I know I'm just on a phone, is picture me running around with my hair on fire.
Okay, hold on. I have.
Okay, we have a picture of you with your hair on fire.
Okay. Well, it's not on fire, but you're running around here on your Capitol comments.
But let's be deadly serious for a moment. The concentration of this level of radical leftism. This isn't a decade or 2 decades ago where a quarter, a third of Democrats were old Southern blue dog Democrats that were, like a Joe Manchin type. They don't exist. A couple weeks ago, we had, the media was abuzz because there were 9 Democrats who were going to hold up this $3.5 trillion of spending. They folded in the first evening. When you have a concentration of power, and then a concentration of power in those who do fundamentally want to change this country, which Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden intend to make us a socialist republic, if they keep the republic part, you realize what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what, it's just amazing how we see these things that are happening. When somebody stands up and they put their left hand on the Bible, they raise their right hand, they said, "I will protect and defend the Constitution," and they swear under oath that they will do that, and then you see what they're doing to totally disavow what the Constitution says and what our individual rights and liberties and freedoms are.
It's a showcase when they do that.
There has to be some sort of consequences for somebody to swear an oath and they go totally against it.
The consequence has to be they lose their election. The fact of the matter is the Founding Fathers gave us a system where an educated electorate, we should rise up, but the way you rise up is you win the next election and then realize you never, ever, ever, ever allow Democrats and leftists to hold power again.
Oh.
And you do it by beating them.
Well,
We don't do it by complaining. We don't do it by just being angry all the time. We beat them, and that's why,
David,
like
that's easier said
we're gonna
than
bring out
done.
leadership, but we're going to bring out like Leadership Institute to do campaign training and these things because we need to win.
Well, that's
It's not
easier
enough
said
just
than
to be
done,
angry.
David, because I know some of your colleagues, and they've been there forever, and you know some of them from south of this district, down in Tucson. And these people, I have no idea how they stay in power. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, you know, one of them used to go around I think the Capitol Police used to drag him home. He was drunk and didn't even know where his residence was. And you know who I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And
So we need to educate
yet
the
these
populace,
people,
right?
but they stay in power. I mean, the news covered those stories, and you know, it was really, really pretty sad. David, we're going to have to let you go.
How do we get in touch with David
Yeah,
Schweikert?
how does I know how to get in touch with it, but how does the public get in touch with you, David?
You know, I mean, look, I'm really easy to get hold of. Just if you Google my name, you'll have the website that has my direct email address. Because you always got to be careful. If you need a passport, if you're having a problem with the IRS or Social Security, use my office.
All of the above.
I think we are really, really good at taking on the bureaucracy.
And I do
If you
appreciate
have-
when I've called you, you've always been gracious and offered to help. We've been talking with David Schweikert. David, we're going to let you get to bed if you can get away from the vending
All right.
machines.
Thank you all.
And the coffee
Bye
machine
now.
especially.
Thanks so
We'll
much.
talk to you soon, David. Thank you so much. We have another something coming up here that you're going to really enjoy. It's pre-taped, and it's a lady journalist from London, England. And so stay tuned. We'll be right back. And this is going to be really exciting. She's been deported.